In my opinion, the target ought to be post-COVID syndrome, chronic, long-term, post-acute COVID disease. People healing from the COVID are not fully healed. Some of them have a very, very long-term program. This is, in these days, that will be a lot of money on COVID. I hope that people will accept this suggestion.
May I comment one thing? I mean, because
you are an advisor of the
yeah.
Helmut project, therefore you have it.
No, because I would like to say, I mean, now with COVID-19, this acquired weakness in response to critical care modern critical care has become evident, but it has been there all the time. And I think not, I mean, 10 years ago, I mean, critical illness survivors were evaluated for quality of life 1, 2, and 5 years after hospital discharge. That is severely impaired quality of life, and the most important factor was impaired neuromuscular function. So it's not really related to the virus in itself, it's related to the long-term critical care. And it will be the I mean, and also we have to remember that these are life-saving interventions, of course. So, I mean, these things will be present long time after even this pandemic has disappeared. So I think it's a very important clinical problem.
Therefore, I do not understand. Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
Very good idea. Very good idea. And of course, we can always surf on this COVID-19 wave right now.
I ask to all the audience, there are existing EU programs dedicated to this goal, to this aim, to this idea? I hope not. Therefore, we could be under the team that will suggest to the EU to inject money on our research. But these are Ugo dreams, and now critical decision and of Helmut. We go on with this idea, or we are wasting your and all people time?
No, Ugo, I think as usual, your dreams becoming true all the time. You know, it's time depending. No, but very often. And so I think it's a very intelligent problematic now, the EU project. But I don't know. At the moment, they are all EU projects postponed. You know, I don't know, and I have no connection to the EU. Otherwise, all the projects are postponed. Maybe we are just in time to have to give some information for this new period. The new period will start next year.
This is more than enough for me. Could we ask Professor Hoppeler to explain his idea on eccentric training in 7 minutes?
Yes, I can try to do that. I can try to do that. Okay.
This is only the very beginning, I hope, of a long story. Therefore.
Okay, here we are. You can see now my screen, I guess.
Yes, it is working.
So, proposed measure to improve active aging, and of course, potential targets of research. We have heard about fermented papaya, branch chain amino acid, oxytocin, testosterone, protein, and other supplementation. But of course, we all know that the magic bullet in active aging is exercise. Endurance exercise, we don't know the intensity, duration, or frequency. Strength training, basically the same, and we even know less about balance training and which kind and how much we have to do. For me, of particular interest is that what is largely neglected is eccentric exercise in this context. Eccentric exercise is negative work, i.e. means that we activate muscles when the muscle is lengthening. We use this for negative work, i.e. when we break walking downhill, or, and also importantly, we use it, eccentric contractions, to generate enormous torque so that the tendons can lengthen to regain energy with the stride. This is elastic storage of energy, which can save in hopping animals up to 70% of the metabolic power required for ambulation. Now, one of the problems is that there is no consensus on the physiological mechanisms of eccentric contraction as of yet. It is said it may be titin, but there is quite a disagreement, and the mechanism by which titin is supposed to work is unknown. If you don't believe that we don't understand how eccentric contractions work physiologically, you look at the paper down here by Leonard, it's Herzog's group in Calgary, American Journal of Physiology, which actually shows that the torque that is produced in eccentric contractions cannot come from the cross bridges. So there must be another mechanism. Eccentric power has three unique properties that can be used. So it's translationally speaking, it can produce, it can produce very high torques, it has low metabolic requirements, and it challenges coordination. I will make a short point for each of this. This can be used in training and rehabilitation. High torque is because with concentric contraction, the torque decreases in increasing speed, which is called the Hill relationship, which doesn't happen in eccentric contraction. Torque goes up and stays high. As a consequence, and I don't go into the details, it's just physics, the power, which is torque times angular velocity, increases, and with increasing speeds just continues to increase. There is no limit basically to the power you can produce eccentrically, at least not from a physical point of view. So what the problem with eccentric contraction is, if you have high power eccentric contraction, you risk to damage the muscle tissue. That's one undesired property of eccentric contractions. Low metabolic requirement, as Spiegel and Ritchie showed in the 50s already, you need only a quarter of the metabolic power to produce the same torque in eccentric than in concentric contractions. And that can be used in all kinds of situations where people, because of old age or because of central limitation, heart insufficiency, COPD, and others, do not have the metabolic power anymore to mechanically load their muscles enough so they can maintain the muscle mass. Difficult coordination is the third, because it can be shown that you use half the integrated EMG to produce the same amount of braking than accelerating power. Eccentrically use half of it. So in the PNS, it says you have a much coarser control of torque, which may be a cause why when you get older and you lose muscle mass, you also lose control. In particular, you lose eccentric control, but there are also CNS factors which are less well developed, but we certainly know that there are differences in central activation. It takes longer and it uses more parts of the brain to be active. So what you know, this is just a self-promotion, but I think currently the only book which is written about eccentric exercise, both the physiology and the application, has been published about 3 or 4 years ago by myself. There is little research on the basic mechanism, and there is little practical application, in part because it's difficult to do, because if you do it controlled, you need an eccentric machine. So I think why we don't see much more of it, there is generally very little comprehension of the physiology. People and doctors don't understand what eccentric contractions are, that they are real, they are a phenomenon that we live with every step we make, because we activate concentrically and eccentrically with every step. And for me, the phenomenon is we don't know how the eccentric part works, but we know that we can use it certainly in exercise, in sport, and in particular in the third age, because it has some favorable and important physiological properties. So I hope I finished in 6 minutes. Okay? I just go out here and I leave this this to you.
Thanks, Hans. Ugo, we didn't know that we will have some topic about eccentric exercise, because Professor Hammer from Bratislava and we had a EU project on eccentric and concentric exercises, and it depends on the machine, you know?
I said yesterday during the 10 minutes or 20 minutes that I had a brandy in my glass, and therefore maybe I am wrong, but I remind that I said to Professor Hoppeler that you have a machine that seems to be working more or less in that with that properties, but I am not an expert. I took the liberty to oblige you and Hans to talk about this, because in my naive mind, this could be a chance, an opportunity to collaborate after 40 years, 50 years, how long? How many decades? When you collaborated with Professor Hoppeler, you remember 71? Helmut?
Yeah. I only want to say,
these are just brainstorming, just seeds, to hoping that from a seed we will have a big tree, in maybe not in 50 years, but in 3 months or so.
Glad to listen to your presentation. I'm Nate Šarabon, one of the members of the Dr. Karen's group, otherwise from Slovenia. And I just wanted to notify that about half a year ago, one of the plans inside the Center of Active Aging efforts was also to have a subgroup training using flywheel training machine, which predominates eccentric load as well. We even started with some custom development adapted for seniors, taking care of better stability with vertical kind of sliders that would help stabilize the person during the flywheel training, which is the mass inertia based machine, and increases, it's pretty cheaply built. And
the key question, Nate, quick question for today is: are you interested to collaborate to eventually on this idea, or you are too busy?
No, I think the eccentric training makes a lot of sense.
Therefore, you are interested. Thank you very much.
So we have definitely interest to collaborate.
We have not time. We have maximum 1 hour, and therefore we have to go straight to the conclusion. Yes, no, this is bad idea. This is loss of time.
But
No,
I think the most expert now is Professor Hammer. He is online,
Yes.
and he can refer a little bit of what we have done in the past. Please.
But
do
I
that.
am more interested, Dusan, I am more interested. Are you open to continue your collaboration with Helmut, adding to the what you are doing was done, also this extra expertise, or this will destroy the collaboration?
No, you know, I always love to design new gadgets, new systems. And when I was listening to excellent talk of Professor Hoppeler about eccentric training, so I think the units we have built so far, especially the leg press machine, which can control all the parameters. We can control velocity.
Wonderful. This is a wonderful news for Professor Hoppeler, because he is looking for application.
Ugo, let him lead 2 minutes talk, please.
Now,
Yes, of course. I will close my microphone.
I will not need the 2 minutes. I just want to highlight the characteristics of that system, which can be, you know, we have a unit for leg press, but it can be modified for any exercise, in fact. So we control, because it's based on linear motors, we can control all the biomechanical parameters involved in resistance exercise in both concentric and eccentric phase. We can have an online parameters displayed in graphical and digital form. So I think this is very useful gadget or the machine to study eccentric exercise. And I just, from different point of view, there's a group of Japanese called Nosaka. He's currently in Perth at McCowan University, and they even have a kind of society to study eccentric exercise. So it's also somebody who could be involved in some way. That's very briefly my input into this topic. And I mean, I see because the eccentric exercise, for instance, you know better, Helmut, than me, that it's one of the best or the only means which can really works in Achilles tendonitis as a mean for treatment, to my knowledge. So I think it has a great potential. Of course, though, as very nicely shown by Professor Hoppeler, there are still a lot of streets to explore. Thanks for your attention.
I need 1 minute. We have done some experiments on electrical stimulation versus eccentric exercises on the leg press machine. Yeah, and in students and in some, but only in 1 or 2 elderly persons, not very much. But Hans, eccentric exercise, maybe Jan can please make more information. We did on the leg press, and we have always to be very in a safe range of motion, because the impact power on elderly joints is very, we have to define it in advance, and also the impact of the force. How long and how quick is the impact to the cartilage? This is not to cause any damage, because if I go downstairs or hill up with my old knees, I can't go very fast, and the next day I have swelling and pain in my knee. You know, because if I go downstairs, make more eccentric exercise, I have always some problems. But no, somebody, they are also at the age of 70 in a very good shape with their knees, and they can do the eccentric exercise. But you should say, when we do a squat every day, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, we have also a combination of concentric and eccentric exercise in the daily living. If you go down the stairs, you have eccentric exercise. Yeah, but we have not We have tried to have some scientific approaches, and we Dusan developed this mechanical electronic leg press machine with no weights, but we can produce all the resistance and the velocity and the changes of direction what we can program. Okay, so it would be a very nice possibility to restore the old leg press machine of Dusan, and in combination with your expertise.
Helmut, may I just say, I'm not talking about high load eccentric exercise. This is of course not possible. I know that. You know, when you go up and down and you make squats and so on, you can't do that with old people. What I do is completely different. I use moderate load eccentric exercise over prolonged periods of time. And this, there you can completely circumvent the problem. And actually, we are capable of using eccentric exercise on moderate loads, like 4 times 5 minutes on people with knee problems. It's no problem, but you can increase muscle mass and you can increase stress. It's not the high load eccentric exercise, and it's not the yo-yo type of eccentric exercise. It is moderate load, continuous work on an eccentric ergometer that we have used, and this has been well documented, and we use it, have started to use it from rehabilitation of anterior cruciate ligaments all the way to training our national ski team at the powers of over 1,000 watts work. But you can go all the way down to 50 watt eccentric exercise. And an important point, and I think Dusan has pointed that out, is you have to be able to say what you do. You have to be exactly in position to dose the eccentric exercise, particularly with elderly people, because otherwise it can be damaging. That is a problem. But dosage is important, and the yo-yo device doesn't really allow you to dose very well. So we have used different approaches for dosing eccentric exercise. Anyway, I think what we would have to do, we have to get together and see more closely what is actually the point.
Okay. We also have a study done on this machine with post-knee replacement, with eccentric loading on post-knee replacement starting about 4 to 6 weeks after the knee replacement. And we have to dose the eccentric loading very, very well to this fresh operated patients, you know. So we are in the same direction. And though Ugo is right all the time, we have to collaborate more than we have done in the past.
Okay, no problem there.
The only problem is we can show you the device in Bratislava and in St. Pölten. I will invite you to come fly to Vienna, and we can travel to Bratislava on the one side to visit Dusan and his colleague. On the other side, we can go to St. Pölten and to have your own experience on this machine and how to manage all these different loadings, velocities, and changes of directions.
Well, and I can invite you to Bern. You can, I can sit you on my eccentric ergometer, which is actually even patented. And if I load you with 50 watts, Helmut, you know what 50 watts is on a concentric ergometer? I load you 10 minutes with 50 watts, and you walk downstairs the wrong way around because you have such an enormous disease, delayed onset muscle soreness.
Only a joke.
10 minutes, 50 watts.
It depends very much on the revolution rate you use.
Yeah, you can't, I agree Dusan. It depends on the revolution rate. But the interesting thing, and that's again for research, is you cannot coordinate active eccentric exercise beyond a cadence of maybe 70 or 80. Our best were the Swiss alpine skiers. They could coordinate up to 90, 100. But you know that concentrically, you can coordinate the cadence of 150 is no problem. So there is a real problem, and that is why I think, in particular in old age and coordination, and the falls are often coordination failures of eccentric exercise, and you can actually train that with that machine.
Okay. Because our system, you can control, you can work in any mode you can imagine. You can work in isokinetic mode and control the resistance by feedback on the screen, or you can just set given resistance and you have that resistance during the concentric in eccentric phase. You can pre-program them separate. You can use zero concentric and whatever you want eccentric. So that's a nice feature of the machine.
Yes, I think that is very good.
My conclusion is that the next Padua Muscle Day, whatever it is, virtual or not, will have a session, half-day session, in which Sarabon, Jan, Helmut, Dusan, and Hans, and his wife on the back may discuss for a full afternoon on this topic. Would be May the good month to do this next year, because March will be virtual. April will be virtual Padua Muscle Day. May, half of May, maybe there is a chance to be all once again in Montegrotto and cycle on the hill half a day and discuss the other half.
Ugo, you are close to Vatican, so you have to pray. Maybe to help.
But Ugo, I have a suggestion. Can we divide the Padua Muscle Days 1 or 2 days in Bratislava and then 2 to 3 days in Padua?
If virtual, we can do next week.
Yeah,
if virtual, whatever time we can do, not Padua Muscle Day. We can. It is mandatory to. I am interfering because we have to learn how to use virtual conferencing.
I think
this is the major results of the Padua Muscle Days that we are doing.
But without personal contact to all of you, I'm not very
No,
happy.
I will organize what I will organize from Padua, if my wife allow me, or I will be here in Montegrotto, and you are everywhere in the world, and we do like yesterday, like Thursday, tomorrow, anytime. This will be.
Okay.
You have to accept this idea because you will be obliged to
accept this idea. Ugo, can we change to another topic?
Of course.
Eccentric to another, to rehabilitation once again, because I prepared and showed you this.
1 o'clock, I have to go to my lunch. Therefore, make short comments, please.
I think the session was on rehabilitation, and therefore I prepared this. I only show once again you see the slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The third part is optimization of methods and resources. Yeah. So have personalized rehabilitation therapy strategies is okay. Yes. But we have to go to faster, cheaper, and more effective therapy strategies. And one can be eccentric exercises, to have more effect in shorter time. Yeah. Especially in more effective loading of what we are doing, But we have also do all this with the underlying mechanism of our basic researchers to have this analyzing of all what we are doing and to make this this therapy strategies more safe. Not only cheaper, faster, also more safe, you know. And therefore, I think the future will be more than till now a translational rehabilitation in the combination of basic researchers and clinicians, and especially of some very specialized researchers as Hans in the field of sports science and Lars in the field of myopathies in critical illness problems. Because this is also a very, very intensive chapter. We have to because it's similar or it's the same of the COVID-19 patients. They are long-term, 2 weeks on the ICU. And then we have all this problematic of ICU myopathies, as Lars demonstrated very impressive today. This is my talk to initiate something about rehabilitation medicine in the future. Collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move to another contribution, possibly with a slide, if not with a short talk. Who will be the next? Feliciano?
I'm sure Feliciano will support all the clinical work we will do.
Therefore, I present my own slide.
I have no slides, but I think when we talk about human samples, I can obviously support all of the activities if I can have biopsies and do analysis. Regarding what we have discussed so far, I agree that eccentric exercise is definitely a powerful stimulus for muscle, but I share with Helmut the worry that probably we have to be careful on how we apply eccentric exercise on aging people, because obviously muscle soreness and possibility of injury is a problem, you know? Because this even myself that I do sport a lot. If one day I go out and I run 3 kilometers downhill, I'm gonna have a lot of muscle pain the next 3 days. I train every day with other activities. So it is, we have to be careful how we apply and I'm very curious actually to see the machine that Professor Opler is using, because I haven't seen it.
Can I just say something to that?
Yes.
You know, eccentric exercise is something, it exists something like the repeated bout action. That means that with the first exposition to eccentric exercise, you may have delayed onset muscle soreness. But when you do it again, you don't have it. So what we have done, we have developed protocol with which you begin with very low eccentric loads, and over the time of 1 or 2 weeks, you increase the load, and you never ever reach the pain threshold. So you have to use the repeated bout action of eccentric exercise not to damage the muscle, but you have to do that. That's part of the game. Okay, just to answer your.
Can I ask you briefly to this topic? You have to have an adaptation of the connective tissue and the passive membranes in the muscle. Did you measure collagen 1, 3, and 6 within this time of adaptation?
No, but what we did is we looked very closely at the gene expression of all the interstitial activated aspects that you can have of tissue. We didn't look at the proteins, we looked at the gene expression. And okay. Yes, you activate interstitial, you activate interstitial parts of the system, yes.
Yes. So this is the part of Antonio Musaro. He has to support us in this field. Antonio, you hear us?
No, Antonio left, I think.
No,
Antonio
he
left?
had, yes, he
Oh,
sent a
sorry.
message. He had to leave.
Sorry, I have to leave the session.
Okay, sorry to have interrupted, but I
No,
just
this is
wanted to
okay.
make that clear.
No, I actually agree with what Professor Hoppeler has said, because it's my personal experience that when I never run downhill, if I run once downhill, I have a muscle pain, but if I do it once a week, then muscle pain never comes back. It's true.
This is just a slide. This is summary of my proposal. Add new collaborators to CAA future plans, not in 2 months, but maybe in 1 year, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years. One is Hans Hoppeler.
3 months.
The second is Lars Larsson. The third is Yuki Hayashi, the man of the fermented papaya.
Okay.
Extend to patient healed from COVID, but suffering chronic
Post-COVID syndrome.
COVID chronic syndrome. They are old, the vast majority. In any cases, they are early age person. Add nutrition intervention to CAA future plans, Yuki's fermented papaya, and or protein enriched sweet biscuits. Old person like biscuits. If we are able to put 50% of protein in that biscuits, you will have a good, cheap, safe nutrition approach. Of course, add Hans Hoppeler and centric training approach among the research aims to be tested. And last, implement saliva testing in all future approaches. That's all.
Saliva is not written.
Sorry?
Saliva is not written.
Mouth fluids and sudore, if you like.
Okay, we will add. Okay, but only to make a little bit a nice story. I started sport medicine about 40 years ago to prepare protein food. You know, protein content of 20, 30, 50%. You know. Immediately after preparation you can eat all, but after 1 hour it's not nearly impossible to eat 50% of protein cake or so.
This will be a problem, I know. These are Ugo naive ideas. I will be happy if only 1% will have a future. In my life, my rate of success is 1 in 1,000 ideas.
Ugo, the last 5 minutes of the presentation now should be more concrete. When can we meet and how can we meet? Maybe starting in 3 weeks.
I strongly suggest that you start to write all the lines that you are able to remember. I started the process with bad idea. You have to inject good ideas on this slide and remove whatever is rubbish. Starting from Hans Hoppeler rehabilitation approaches.
I can also think Lars is a very crucial member of this new platform of ideas, because the ICU patients is really a big problem what we have to solve in the near future, you know.
And I've sort of written down a couple of points here, which I think could be relevant to many of us here, relation to the ICU muscle wasting and the post-ICU follow-up. Because I think, at least what we see, mitochondria is playing a key factor for the muscle dysfunction. involved in protein modifications, etc., that can be counteracted with different types of interventions. And I think also this inflammaging, I mean, the inflammatory response associated with old age, which is really, goes up sky high in response to this ICU intervention with mechanical ventilation in the old, which you don't see in the young. And that plays also a very important role in the pathophysiology, I think, of the muscle weakness as well. So I think mitochondria aging, and of course translation of rehabilitation interventions from the experimental model to the clinic. And at least what I can see from our experience, both with passive mechanical loading and electrical stimulation, it improves muscle function, but it doesn't restore the problem, so to say. It's still there. But it is probably one of the interventions that should be used together with others as well. And I think there are many promising pharmaceutical interventions that we can test. And the best are not coming from pharmaceutical industry. I think it comes from basic science, really. So,
yeah,
I agree on that. And I think what might be helpful would be to have, before we go on, just eventually bilateral talks, because if we're too many, it's very difficult to keep track. But we could bilaterally, even with virtual conference with 2, maybe 3, discuss more in detail how we would like to proceed and what we think is important.
sure.
It's very difficult if we are so many.
yeah. This is the first step. I said in 2 weeks we can start with this bilateral talks each other, you know, and to spread around what we have agreed, and then one to the other we can solve something till Christmas or till the end of January. Hugo, you agree?
I fully agree. I promise to try to make a short list of topics that I learned during these 2 days that could be potential contributors to the future programs. If my young colleagues, Bernardi, do not show fake data, his approach will save mitochondria in all the diseases. Could be this true? I don't know, but why not to try?
Okay.
I am not saying to include Paolo Bernardi in your list of collaborators, but only use his ideas, because we are allowed, because now they are public. And there are several good ideas that were the best, let me say, the best talk of the 2 days were based on good ideas. Feliciano Protase is the final evidence of this approach. Take advantage of the time that we spent here in the last 2 days to improve our program, hoping that we may sell this idea to who has a lot of money, and a few percentage of their lot of money for us, for me, will be a lot of money.
Okay.
Nothing more than that. Collect idea. This is my goal. This is my duties. This is my obligation to the CAA as a supervisor of something, I don't know exactly, for the LBI. I do this with this naive approach, maybe rude, but seems to be effective.
But Hugo, I said only to say we should collaborate is okay, but we have also to save some time to re-educate each other what we have done in the past, you know, and what is the knowledge of Hammer. Hammer has to talk with Hans Hopperler, you know, otherwise we are losing all this experience, what they have done.
I fully agree, but your proposal to start this partly virtual, possibly in presence, I think that Professor Hoppeler will be happy to drive his bicycle also in Vienna, and not only in Berna. And he will drive from Berna to Vienna next week, in the next week. Is this possible? Is this an option?
Well,
or you are over busy?
Hans, it will be a renaissance of my traveling from Vienna to Bern with something in in the airplane.
Well, I think it's very important, both Lars, Helmut, Amar, and Sarabon, we will probably have together to look a little bit in what we really have and what we might think that it might contribute. And I entirely agree with Lars. Basically, I mean, I listened to your talk and I loved it. It was fantastic talk, very much to the time and very basic, very solid science. I think it has a huge impact in the future. And so I think we have to sort of straddle between the good basic science, what we need to know, and how we can do how we can most quickly transfer that into a benefit to people who might profit from this basic science. I think that's, for me, the essence.